All right, turn to James chapter 5. I'll just have you open and ready for when we get there. So we're continuing our series on James, and the title today is Faith Waits. We're looking at the consequences of materialism. There's a Russian author, you probably heard of him, Leo Tolstoy. He wrote a short story. It said, "How Much Land Does a Man Need?" was the title. And the story is about the destructive consequences of greed. And the main character is, I hope I'm saying this, Pahom. And he's a peasant farmer, and his wife's talking about the pleasures of a wealthy lifestyle. And he comes to the conclusion that if he had more land to farm, therefore more income, he could resist the sinful temptations of a lavish lifestyle. And the devil overhears him say this and sets to destroy him, Pahom, through greed. So he starts to increase his farmland using his resources. Instead of helping others, he keeps it all to himself. He runs out of land and he wants more and more, and it begins to grow, and he's discontent with the land that he has. And a villager or trader comes to him, and it's really the devil and in disguise, and drops by and tells him there's inexpensive land here, and he goes and buys it, and he wants more and more. And he learns about this group, Bashkirs, nomadic tribes of herdmen, and they have great swaths of land, and he thinks he can go in there and get a great deal, kind of rip them off for their land. And he goes to them, and for 1,000 rubles, he could purchase as much land as he could walk in a day. Okay, so that's the deal he makes with them. And he starts out in the early morning, sunrise, and he walking, does a big loop, and he's just barely able to make it back to his starting point. And then when he makes it back, he collapses, falls over dead. Did all that and ended up dying. Tolstoy answers his question in the last line. He said, 6 feet from head to heels was all he needed. The devil was successful. Pahom had been destroyed by his own greed. That's really the moral of the story. He wanted more and more, and it ends up killing him in the end. And that's just a story about greed. And we like stuff as well. Okay, I'm not like that guy, but we like stuff. We plan our goals, we hoard it, and we like material stuff. And we identify ourselves by the amount and quality we have. I got people, look at the newest phone here. I got the newest, iPhone 50. I don't know what they're up to there. Look, I can do this. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I like it now. You can't tell if you have an older or new phone. They all look the same. I think that's great. Before you could tell, I've got the flip phone, and I've got this one slides up, and you could tell. Now nobody knows that mine's 20 years old or whatever. But we get fixated on that stuff. We do that. I got to have the fanciest car, and I got to update my car, and we pay for our cars and we drive them until they die, and then we get a new one, and whatever we can afford. But we get fixated on it. We think it's the key to happiness, satisfaction. Advertisements, we see them this way. It's not just the TV. It's the advertisements, and you think, well, they don't work on me. Of course they don't work on me. I'm so strong. Why are they paying millions and millions of dollars at the Super Bowl to advertise their products if it doesn't work? I think they know what they're doing. I think it does work. And, we got to have this stuff. We got to watch this. We got to do this because it's cool. And, we got to be careful of that. Look at the Israelites going into the promised land, and it's filled with abundant resources, land flowing with milk and honey. And Moses didn't want them to forget who was providing all this stuff. It was God. Okay, all these things come from God. And Israelites, like people everywhere, were dependent on God in times of need. But as soon as we get, lifted up and rich, and we forget about God. And we have to be careful of that in times of plenty. And what did God do? He used times of trouble to bring them back, right? Take away everything you got, and it's like, I need God now. And we tend to do the same thing. And we're going to read some of the verses in a minute, but I want to say a few things, preface this. I did this before at the beginning at chapters 1 and 2, talked about the rich as well, and it's kind of mirroring it here. But first thing is, just because you're rich doesn't make you evil. And just because you're poor doesn't make you virtuous. Okay, we have this, we're getting fed this line that the rich are evil and they stole from the poor, and the poor are poor because they're being robbed by the rich. And, this income inequality you hear, and we have to be careful of that, okay? It's not like you had $999,000 and you're a good person and you get $1. You're a millionaire now. You're evil. It just doesn't work that way. I said this before, but Bernie Sanders gets into Congress and he said, "There's too many millionaires. There are all these millionaires." And he became a millionaire. Then he's complaining about the billionaires, and that's kind of how we look at it. And everybody richer than us is evil. But a lot of it has to do with life choices. Okay, some people don't have money because make poor choices, and some people have money because they made good choices. And I've heard it said that to be middle class in America, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, you have to do 3 things. Okay, not very hard. You have to graduate high school, get a job, and not have kids out of wedlock. And that 99% of people do just those 3 basic things are middle class in America. So sometimes we make poor decisions, and you can have good rich people, bad evil rich people. You can have bad poor people, and so I don't get this. You're rich and you're evil, and we get this class warfare thing. The other thing I want to say is we are rich. Okay, we like to compare ourselves to Bill Gates or the richest men in the world, but in America there are billions and billions of people in this world that would give their right arm to have what we have. Okay, just look at, I think we've had 8 million immigrants in the last 2-3 years coming across, risking their life just to get in this country. And we take that for granted. Just the fact that we are living in this country, even the poorest Americans are wealthy compared to 3/4 of the world. I was reading an article and it said that the Chinese are pouring in at the border. They said there's more Chinese coming in through the San Diego border than Mexicans. And what they're doing is they're traveling all the way to Ecuador, and they're hiking or however, they're getting all the way up to America. And we don't think of China as a third world, it's second world, first world country, and they are so desperate to get here just to be in this country that they are flying to Ecuador and going all the way up and trying to get in here. And I don't know how many people live in China. Yeah, but not all of them are. Yeah. But that's a lot of people just for the freedom that we have. We are wealthy. I said this before, but they showed some propaganda. They were trying to show propaganda to the Russians about poor Americans, and the Russians laughed because they said even the poorest Americans are overweight. When you're truly in Africa or even Russia, you're looking for your next meal. That's poor. You're waiting in lines for food, and we don't experience that. So we really are the rich. When this says the rich, this is talking about us. Don't think, this is some millionaire, billionaire. We are to most of the world, we are the rich. So just keep that in mind when we go through this. That Jesus did teach some principles about wealth, some dangers. There's some things to watch out. Earthly treasures disintegrate, but heavenly treasures never fade. In Matthew chapter 6 in the Sermon on the Mount. It's difficult for the wealthy to let go of their possessions to enter the kingdom. Sometimes we trust in what we have, and those people are the hardest people to reach because they think they've got it all taken care of, and they don't need anybody or anything. They don't need God because they're all got everything they think they need. So sometimes wealth can be an obstacle. We will have to answer to God in how we handle our resources. We're stewards of what God's given us. Everything we have is God's, our children, every possession we have. And we're going to have to give an account of when the master comes back and he said, I gave you these talents, what'd you do with them? And they're like, I thought it was mine. He's like, no, this is God's. Greed will profane that which is holy. And we have to be careful of greed. So it's not wrong to have money, but it's really the love. The Bible says the love of money. A lot of people misquote that. We need money. We need money to buy food and survive. Okay, having money, working, and that is not bad, but it's the love of money. So how can we avoid falling into the same trap as the Israelites? How should we believers handle and view wealth? And James teaches that if we rest in God, accepting that He is the source and provider of our goodness, and that's so important, realizing where it comes from. We take, I worked for this. It's all mine, and we don't want to give God the glory. And realize it all comes from God. And we will exercise patience in everything that life throws at us. No oppression, trial, or sickness can move us from that quiet place of rest in God. And we're going to have peace in our lives rather than conflict. We talked about that before in James 4. We'll use our words to minister to others rather than destroy them. And there's some things to look at here. I'm going to read, if you look in James chapter 5, verse 1. Material possessions decay. James chapter 1 says, Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you. And shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. And as New Yorkers, where they salt the roads, we can understand the rust of them shall be witness against you, as our cars, our wonderful cars that we paid all that money slowly rust. I just got rid of our van, and Brother B.A. said the motor's going to fall out soon. It's all rusted there, and you're going to have to pay all this money to get it all welded so your engine just doesn't fall out. He goes, it's falling apart. You can see it from the outside, but it was on its final days. We're going to send it down the river now. We got another van, but it's done. It's rusted. All that money you put into it, and it's just a scrap of rust, and it's going to sit in a lot there and be scrapped for parts, and it's done, and we put all this money and all this stuff into things, and it all rusts and decays. Thanks to the curse of sin, we have to deal with decay. No matter how new something is, we get it. You get the new phone or new shoes. It's eventually gonna decay and fall apart, and we're gonna need a new one and break, wear out, have to be replaced. Brand new car depreciates the second you drive it off the lot. We've been doing a lot of research on cars. My wife has just been studying for the last weeks on the best deals. She finally got one. But currency rates fluctuate. We spend all our lives trying to get these things, and then they're worn out. Then we need to get new ones, and now we need to get the new phone, because the old phone that was the greatest thing a year ago is just now, no good now. I need a new one. That's if we don't misplace something or get robbed. We're going on a trip, and I was bringing cash, 'cause sometimes it's hard to get out money. We're going out of the country. It was like an envelope with $700. We're getting ready to leave for the airport, and I can't find that $700. I am freaking out. I'm like, I know I just had it. I'm looking everywhere. Finally, someone told me, look in the trash. I had put something on it and then picked it up and thrown it in the trash, and there is my $700. If I wouldn't have knew and needed it right then and there, I probably would have just thrown it out. $700. All that work for that money, and it's just gone like that. Just one simple, throw it in the trash, and $700. And I'm like, we got to, we will do all this work for this money, and then it just decays.
You found it, right?
I did find it in the trash, yes. What? How much did you lose? $100. Yes. Yes. Look in your trash. That's right. If I wouldn't have known I had it and I needed it because we were leaving, I know I had it like the day before. I knew it was there, and I looked everywhere. I'm like, this is the weirdest place to look, but yeah, I threw it out. $700. Can't even blame my wife on that one. It was totally me. But things are going to corrupt. We're going to misplace them. We're going to get robbed. It's difficult to secure things, no matter how safe we keep our money. Just look, we're going to put it in the bank. Along comes inflation. Okay, we're losing our money as we speak, and it's getting less and less, and we're basically getting robbed silently through inflation. But we think we got it all under control. But how foolish is it to pin all our happiness on stuff we can't even control? And that's really a lot of people. It's things. I got to have this new thing, and it's all materialism. Material things do have practical value. Okay, it's nice to have. We need some certain things. It's nice to have. But we tend to assign greater worth than they really are. Okay, if we mourn at the loss of a thing like we do a loved one or a person, we got to problem. That really shows us where we have our values. God invites us to invest in heavenly treasure. And the purpose of God's treasure is not to bring us pleasure, security, or honor. Its purpose is to glorify God. Okay, and you think about it. When you get your priorities straight, when you realize, why are we here? I can't remember, quote that verse, but there's a verse, I think, in Revelation, and it says, we're here to glorify God. We're here for God's glory. And when we realize that and we live that, we're going to be laying up eternal treasures, not, it's not for our own pleasure, it's not for our own glory and our own wants, but it's for God's glory that will change the whole way we think. So material possessions decay. Selfishness leads to abuse. Look in verse 4. It says, behold, the hire the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which of you kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Ye have lived in pleasure on the earth and been wanton. Ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. Ye have condemned and killed the just. He doth not resist you. And when God blesses us with resources, He expects us to have honesty and generosity. Okay, we need to, God entrusts us with something. I heard a preacher say, sometimes God doesn't give you wealth because He can't trust you with it. What are you to abuse it, or it would ruin you or corrupt you, and that's why you don't have it. And it's probably true. After all, everything we have belongs to God. We have to realize that. Jesus relates the story of a master who gives money to his servants to invest. He comes back and he finds the two had invested, had done something with it on their return. And the third servant, he just hoarded it. Simply takes it and buries it and hoarded it and didn't do anything with it. And he consequently receives punishment. James, the verses we just read, describes people who, like the dishonest servant, just hoarded their wealth. What they did was they had a means to pay their workers, and they didn't do it. They even profited off the labor of the workers, and they ripped them off. Not only did these wealthy people break a contract, they took the workers' wages and used it to indulge themselves. Okay, so he's warning against that. Be careful of that. We don't want to do the same thing. Workers were not wealthy. They probably depended on the payment for their living expenses. So he's talking here about be careful. Sometimes we can get so into money and we just don't care about people. And that money, he's talking there in that example, the money was more important to the employers than the people, than the employees. In a broken world, a lot of that injustice goes unchecked. And we talked in James 2, verses 6 to 7, the rich were making trouble for the believers. The rich took them to court and blasphemed God. And James, in chapter 5, accuses the rich of murdering the innocent. And he was asking, why do the believers admire these people? They were corrupt. And when we love objects, we start to treat people like objects. And we have to be careful. A lot of people just want to use. How can I use that person for gain for myself? And as soon as I can't use them, then I'm going to move on to somebody else. They say a measure of a person's character is how they treat people that can't do anything for them. Okay, how do they help the poor? Do they just don't care a lick, or do they care about people that can't help them, or are they just they're just nice to people, they're bosses, and the people above them, they think they can promote them and elevate them, and that's the people they're going to be nice to. God despises this kind of attitude. By God's grace, believers will resist the moral corruption of riches. Okay, and I don't have to worry about being morally corrupted by riches, but you can give me some and I'll see how I do, if you want. But we have to be careful of that. Look for actively for ways to love others and deal with them honestly. We owe somebody money, don't withhold what's due. Okay, if we're in debt, we need to pay it. Respect and care for each person, never using them as merely means to get what we want. And it should be, how can I help people? That should be our view. When we have that attitude of how can I be a blessing to people, God will bless us. When it's all about how can I get, then, God's not going to bless that attitude, and we have to be careful of that. And James emphasizes how to treat others, especially those in need, And that really shows the state of our faith. It reflects the state of what we believe. He talks about helping the widows and orphans. Don't treat people differently based on appearance. Why do we do that? Well, that person can do, that person must have money. They could probably do something for me. I want to be nice to them. That person, they probably don't have anything. That's how we judge people. We do it subconsciously sometimes, but don't treat people differently based on appearances. Speak with love. Don't be jealous or selfish. Seek conflict resolution and restoration. And we talked recently about not judging people. Be careful of that. Our investment, loving others and living by faith, takes time before producing the dividends, which is treasures in heaven. And I'm not, I want to invest a little bit and have some money when I retire, but my goal isn't to lay up earthly treasures, and my goal is heavenly treasures. That's my goal in life. And the Bible says those won't rust, those won't corrupt. Jesus' kingdom work is ongoing. His reward will be granted later. I tell people sometimes, I ask them to do something. They're like, oh, well, what's in it for me? I go, oh, God will pay you later, or heavenly treasures, I joke around with people. But really the reward is going to outweigh whatever riches in this world. It's so fleeting. We talked last week about life is just a mist. And think about our life, our 70, 75, 80 years, and compared to eternity, the riches in heaven. And we'll be so glad that whatever we invested in God and in church and in others, we're going to see the results in heaven and be grateful. And, we're not going to think one thing about it, the money that we had or possessions we had on earth. Selfishness lacks integrity. The wealthy hired workers and promised them payment, but they didn't deliver on the promises. In contrast to this honest rich, James urges believers to speak with honesty and integrity. When you say yes, it means yes. Talking about verse 4, it says, look in verse 12 here. It says, but above all things, my brethren, swear not, neither by heaven, neither by earth, neither by any other oath, but let your yea be yea and your nay, nay, lest you fall into condemnation. And we need to be people of integrity. If we say something, we're going to do it. Okay, if we're going to keep our word, people can trust us. We're a reflection of Christ. Believers should let their character speak for them. Followers of Christ especially should have a reputation for being trustworthy. Do we have a reputation? Do people at work, say, well, I trust them. They're a Christian and they keep their word and they've proven that. That should be our reputation. And God hears the cry of the oppressed. Look in verse 4. It says, behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you, kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. You have lived in pleasure on the earth and been wanton. You have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and killed the just, but he doth not resist you. And the one bright spot we see here in these verses is that God does hear the cry of the oppressed. Okay, sometimes I can't imagine having no God, being an atheist, and I'm like, how can God, there's nobody there, there's nobody to cry out to, there's no ultimate justice, there's nobody that can hear them. God, all-knowing and all-wise, He sees every injustice, He knows what's going on, and sometimes we don't see the justice being dealt out, and we think God doesn't hear it, God doesn't see it, God doesn't instantly punish everybody. Thank goodness. We want bad people to be instantly punished, don't we? Until it's us, right? Until we're doing wrong, and it's like, I want mercy, God, please. Show me mercy. Don't punish me right away. And we want to. Oh, why doesn't God punish that evil person? Well, it could be us. Okay. But He'll eventually right all wrongs. He promised to judge the world, and it may not be in this lifetime, but they're gonna be judged one day, whether it's here on earth or it's in heaven. Everybody's gonna get judged. There's gonna be a price for what they do. You'll be rewarded or punished for what we've done, and we have to realize that. It's something that should give us peace, knowing that God's going to make it right. And it's not my job. I look around, we worry, and they're doing this stuff, and they're getting away with this stuff, and they're not getting caught. And it's like, God will take care of it. You got to stop worrying about everybody else, and you get worried about politics and stuff, and they're doing this, and this person's being treated unfairly, and this person's getting away with something, and you're like, God's going to take care of it. He'll make it all right, and He'll take care of it one day. And we don't have to worry about that. The wicked will not go unpunished. Realize that. The wicked will not go unpunished. We don't have to worry about it. God knows more than we do. Okay, we think we know everything, but God knows more than what we know about what they've done, and they're going to pay for it one day, and God will take care of that. So God hears the cry of the oppressed. Faith produces patience. Look in verse 7. It says, "Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. Grudge not one against another, brethren, lest ye be condemned. Behold, the judge standeth before the door. Take my brethren, the prophets who have spoken in the name of the Lord, for an example of suffering, affliction, and of patience. Behold, we count them happy which endure. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. But above all things, my brethren, swear not, neither by heaven nor by earth, neither by any man, neither by any other oath, but let your yea be nay, yea, and your nay be nay, lest ye fall into condemnation. And faith produces patience. When selfish people abuse and mistreat others, faith-filled believers respond by patiently enduring that oppression. And that doesn't mean we have to lay down and just take all abuse, that's not what it's saying. But God's given us a framework to legally protect ourselves. But sometimes we experience oppression, such as religious persecution, and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, you can't, some of these countries, and they're getting persecuted, and we talked the guy from Egypt, what he was going through, and there's just nothing he can do. If the government says we're not going to do this, there's nothing he can do, and it's in God's hands, and we can't force people to stop attacking us in those positions. And we kind of saw a little bit in COVID, all the religious freedoms went out the window, and it's like it's in God's hands. There's not a lot we can do. Believers can demonstrate their faith by responding with love, doing good, and trusting that God will bring the oppressors to justice. And we have to, sometimes, we can do something about it. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes we just got to leave it in God's hands and know that He's going to take care of it, and there'll be justice one day. It's kind of interesting to see some of the politics and some of the people you think getting away with stuff, and they're persecuting others, and all of a sudden all this dirt comes out about them, and all of a sudden they're fired, and they have to quit, and they're persecuting everybody. I'm going to get this one guy, and all of a sudden something comes out. I remember, I won't say names, but a guy, he was going to take down somebody else, and everybody was like, he's a hero, he's going to take down this bad person, and then all of a sudden this stuff came out, and like 2 days later he resigned, some stuff came up about him, and God exposed that, and they're like, what happened to him? And he was gone. And God takes care of things. God exposes people, and you can watch sometimes in real life the justice. I saw like 4 cases politically, and they're going after somebody, and then like they're all in jail now. I'm going to take down this person, and they were doing all this stuff worse than the person they thought they were trying to take down, and they're all in jail, and God makes things right. He knows what's going on. He can expose people. It talks about a farmer using patience in verse 7. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the previous fruit of the earth, and has long patience for it, until he receiveth the early and latter rain. And the command is simple here, be patient. And it's easy to say, but practicing it is hard. And James helps us to understand some examples of patience. The first one he gives us is a farmer. And back then they really didn't have much irrigation like they do now. Okay, as farmers, we have a lot of farmers around here. They can irrigate if it's dry, and they have ways and big sprinklers and all that. But back then they didn't. What'd they have to do? wait on the rain. Okay, that was important, and they couldn't irrigate their crops. They needed the rain, and they're probably praying and hoping for rain. They had to be patient. There was nothing to do but wait for those rains to come. Imagine doing all that work to, tear up the ground and plant the seed, and then you're like, please let it rain. You got to wait, and it's probably hard to wait. The farmer knew that if he did wait, he could expect an abundant, valuable harvest. And he knew if I wait long enough, it's going to rain usually, and we'll get a harvest. He talks about in verse 10. It talks about, take my brethren, the prophets, who have spoken in the name of the Lord, for an example of suffering, affliction, and of patience. And the prophets faithfully and patiently endured. James draws attention to the prophets, and he doesn't specifically name any, but we can identify several prophets that endured all types of hardships for the sake of God's truth. Elijah feared for his life. He was being hunted by the king and the queen there. They were trying to take his life. We look at Hosea's wife, and God commands him to marry a prostitute, and she commits adultery and leaves him. And Jeremiah, he's thrown into the pit and beaten and put in stocks, and not a very good job career there to go into. They weren't really well received. People didn't like them when they prophesied things that wasn't popular, and they were really persecuted. We know Daniel thrown into captivity, thrown into the lion's den, and all that stuff they had to endure. And Jesus, he's more than a prophet. He's God, but a prophet nonetheless, and he faces the ultimate oppression. He has to suffer and for something he didn't do, and die on the cross. And I can't imagine the suffering of being whipped and just the stuff they did. When you read about that, it's just like it was meant to be as painful as possible and make them suffer as much as possible, and he suffered for us. So the prophets patiently endured. It talks about Job's patience rewarded. Verse 11 says, behold, we count them happy which endure. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, and the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. And Job is his third example that James uses. It's the first person we usually think of patience during suffering. He loses everything. And we see here too, this is going back to what I was saying before, Job was a very wealthy man. Okay, he was one of the most wealthy men in the world at the time. And he was a righteous man. Okay, he was, God picked him out of all the people that he could have picked to prove a point and to try my servant Job. But he lost everything: income, health, his children. I couldn't imagine losing one of my children, and to lose all your children, just everything. I mean, you have no time it's one after the other. It's unimaginable to lose, your children, your everything you have, and then, your wife turns on you, tells you to curse God and die, and then your friends, they come in there to cheer you up, pick you up just when you need. Oh, no, wait, they come to condemn you. Okay, so you got nothing really left, and he was patient through it all. And Job had it rough. We really don't have much to complain about compared to Job. And God didn't reveal why he was suffering, did he? He didn't tell him, hey, buddy, I'm going to put you through this, but it'll be okay at the end. He didn't know. He didn't know why God did that to him. He didn't know he was, having a bet with the devil, and he didn't know what was going on. But it produced something greater. Job gained humility and faith through his trials and material blessings as well. He learned about God's sovereignty, compassion, and mercy. And Job changed his perspective, recognizing that God truly is good and powerful. And can I say this? God is good in the bad times. Okay, when we're going through it and life seems to be falling apart, God's still good. We want to think, everything's going great, God's good. And as soon as it goes bad, God's bad. That's how we judge God's goodness. And Job, thankfully, did not view it that way. He realized God's good no matter good or bad, and God's in control, and we have to realize that too. Job makes an unusual statement: those that those who persevere through suffering are blessed. And it's not a very popular thing to hear, but God will put us through suffering to help us grow. Okay, God does things in our lives. Everybody who knows, who wants to work out and get stronger, what do you have to do? Make it hurt, right? Pain. The more pain, no pain, no gain, right? We know that, okay? We know you want to have a good workout and, oh man, I can't lift, I can barely walk, it hurts so much. That's a good workout. I'm going to be stronger. That's the same way it works in life. When we go through trials and tribulations, they make us stronger. And we don't like that, but that's how it works. And so God puts us through things to make us grow spiritually. And we have to realize that. What is God trying to teach me here? What is He trying to, next time something bad happens, what's going on? Why is God allowing this? What is He trying to help me grow? In what area? What's the good I can get out of this? The end is in sight, and talks about Christ's imminent return. Verse 8, be ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. And at times a blessing and a curse, and it places limitations on our lifespan, decays our possessions, but there is a benefit. The constraint of time means that our suffering will not last forever. Okay, our time here is short, and I know some people live in pain, and I can't imagine. You talk to people and you complain, I got this little ache, and then they tell you they're arthritis, or they're just in constant pain, and you're like, wow, I guess my problems aren't that bad. And some people go through it just every day, and just suffering in pain, physical pain sometimes, and realize it's going to be short. It's not going to last. Christ is coming back. There is an end to the trials we endure, whether we see the end in our lifetime or not. If our suffering doesn't end, it will certainly cease when we pass from this life to the next. And like I said, somebody said day 1,250,365. You're going to just be rejoicing in heaven. You're not going to think about the little bit of temporary pain that we had, the temporary suffering that we had here on earth when we're living in heaven for eternity. Faith resulting in patience rests on the promise that Christ will return. For those who have been mistreated, Jesus comes with justice and judgment. And we mentioned that before. He's going to make things right. He's got justice. There is a God who's going to make things right. He will rectify all wrongs. Not only has the Lord of hosts heard the cries of the suffering, but He will also answer them. This promise should strengthen our hearts, no matter what the circumstances we find ourselves in. Realize that God's going to make everything right, and we have nothing to worry about. And so just some things here, don't get caught up in a materialistic society. Realize, this verse, when it says the rich, that's talking about us. We can get caught up in these materialistic things and hoarding our wealth and worried about, material wealth instead of building up treasures in heaven. Be careful our money doesn't corrupt us. Okay, it doesn't ruin us, and make sure we're trying to build heavenly treasures that won't be rust or be corrupted. Let's pray.
John,
Yes, sir.
can I share something?
Yep.
A lot of people can claim that their first name is in the Bible. I'd like to say my last name is in the Bible. Now, I don't know how many know how to spell my name. It's B-E-Y-E-A. If you look at verse 12 there, it's right there. B-E-A. B-E-Y-E-A.
But let your B.A. and your nay. There you are. We know Brother B.A. is famous. He is in verse 12. This is his life verse. Let your B.A. That's your B.A. And your nay. So thank you, Brother B.A. Now you we'll think of you every time we read that. Okay, now we can pray. Now we've got that. If you didn't learn anything today, you learned that in verse 12 of James chapter 5 is Brother B.A.'s name. So thank you. All right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you, dear Lord. We just thank you for the faithfulness of the people here, and just thank you for all that you've blessed us with, dear Lord, and help us to realize that and to help others, dear Lord, and share our wealth that we have and live for you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.